you ever wondered what might have been? Would things be different if you caught the train instead of missing it? How much would your life change if you were 10 minutes early?
No!
Instead of 10 minutes late?
Helen?
If I had just caught that train, I'd have been home ages ago.
You don't want to go wondering about things like that.
Now, Helen's life is about to go down two different tracks. Gwyneth Paltrow and Gwyneth Paltrow in the story of a woman about to choose between a life with the man she's always loved.
Jerry, I asked a simple question.
I mean,
There's no need to become Woody Allen.
And a life with the man she's just met.
I kissed you.
yeah, I spotted that too.
Miramax Films and Paramount Pictures present a romantic comedy about one woman
I'm over him.
No, you're not.
I am.
and life's infinite possibilities.
Don't think that
I didn't think that.
I'm truly, truly sorry.
Two lives, two chances, and a destiny that lies behind two sliding doors.
I love it when a film takes one of the most simplistic ideas, encapsulates it into a rom-com, and then makes you go, oh, of course, why didn't I think of that? It's those sliding door moments which define our destiny. When our destiny changes by actions that we didn't even know that we were doing. Our lives are defined by decisions we never made. I went off to university and found myself living with a few girls who each of them had had conversations with their parents where their parents had asked them whether they wanted them to pay for them to go to university or for their wedding. I hadn't even been asked if I was going to apply to university. It's just what we did. Our Jewish practice is often something that comes within those sliding doors moments. It's just what we do. And if we did it differently, how differently would our lives turn out? How would our destinies change? But rarely in our day-to-day lives are we asked to justify our religious observance. Are we challenged and asked questions of why we do things in a certain way? I've realized the times where I see myself asking people and challenging them about their Jewish observance is when couples come to me, one of whom is Jewish, the other is not, and they're thinking of converting. We talk about their Jewish lives as they are at the moment, whether it's talking about Shabbat, Kashrut, their festival observance. And they talk to me about why they do things, or rather, the lines that they've drawn. And I wonder whether those lines are as arbitrary as they sound when they're talking to me. Are they in fact arbitrary? Or is it really more about the in-laws, or an emotional sensation, or their upbringing, or a rebellion to their upbringing, or a striving for something authentic? Whatever it is, they've drawn lines which only they really understand, and even then one asks, do you understand why you've drawn the line, or have you just drawn a line? This isn't a denominational thing. It's a Jewish thing. Everyone draws a line. Whether it's kashrut, sniut, Shabbat, the list is endless. There's always going to be someone who's drawn a line further to the right than you. You cover your hair, someone else wears a snood. You separate milk and meat, well, they need a particular hechsher on their food. They have a particular hechsher, that hechsher's not good enough for the next person. There's always a line. It's never quite the same line as anybody else's. But this idea of drawing the line there's a great example of it that I love from the Talmud, because this isn't a new phenomenon. The story starts with Levi visiting the house of Yosef, the trapper of fowl. And he's served a platter of peacock head in simmering milk. Levi is horrified. He doesn't eat the meal. And he goes straight to Rav and asks, why has he not been excommunicated? How can he live like this? Rav calmly explains, you and I understand our kashrut from one particular verse, one particular pasuk, with two entities in it. Within one verse, the first bit tells us that you should not eat any carcass. The second part of the verse tells us you should not cook a kid in its mother's milk. We've understood that to mean that you don't cook any carcass in milk. But if you were in Rabbi Yehuda ben Basara's town, you would understand the verse differently. There's a comma there. They're two distinct parts of the same verse. You shouldn't eat a carcass, and you shouldn't boil a kid in its mother's milk. Well, that peacock's mother didn't have any milk, so there's no problem with how they're eating their food. Why do I love the passage? Because it's the Talmud's blasé nature to the idea that we all draw our lines differently, and it's okay as long as they have informed reasoning behind them. For me, the act of deciding how to draw the line is authentic Judaism. The life that follows is just commentary. But we have to learn how to draw the line. And ironically, I like to explain how we draw the line by drawing two triangles. We can look at every aspect of Jewish life through our two triangles, determining our practice and asking ourselves where it is we're going to draw the line. We need to decide what's going to go into our two triangles. Our God and God of our ancestors. This is the opposite to the story of the famous oven of Achnai debate, where the majority decision prevails over Eliezer, even with the support of the heavenly voice. Whether it's God, mitzvot, revelation, a divine prompting, our conscience, however you name it, however you understand it, God needs to get a vote, but the importance is God doesn't get the veto. Because Jewish tradition must also speak to us. The Jew drawing the line needs to ask themselves, what is it that the wealth of our text has to offer us? What's the essence of it? What is it trying to teach me? What voices are speaking to me? How can I understand it? How can I respond to it? How can I enrich it, purify it, and refine it? What is it that Jewish tradition brings with itself to ask me where I'm drawing my line? But the third element of the triangle needs to be our Jewish community. Our lines have to be drawn within a context. Otherwise, what does Judaism end up looking like? If it's just a series of us all drawing our own personal lines. We're not individuals in our religious lives. We're communally obligated beings. It would be easy to leave it at that. Easy to leave those three entities as the only way that we make our decisions. But we're not living in a ghetto. We're living in the context of a world in which we interact with on a daily basis. And therefore, the rest of the world needs to play into our line drawing as well. So mirroring our God and God of our ancestors, Ein Sof, the image of the divine being from back at the beginning of Genesis. Not a particularistic one, but the universalistic one. The God that interacts with the whole world. Either the God that's looking to human beings, to seeing how we behave in order to look for our redemption, or simply our conscience that's asking us, do my actions contribute to a better world? And not just our Jewish tradition, but our wisdom, our knowledge, that which has been passed on to us through science, through ecology, through technology, all that we learn from generation to generation, which goes on to inform not just our lives, but our Jewish lives. We ask ourselves, how does the world around us change our response to our Jewish tradition? And not just our community, not just Klal Yisrael, but humanity. Just as we're part of the Jewish community which helps us draw our lines, so we're also part of the world at large, part of humanity. That which needs to be part of the line drawing as well. What's my responsibility to the world around us? How can I contribute to society in the most ultimate fashion? So, it's not just about two triangles. It's about what those triangles can create. Those triangles which go on to create our Jewish selves. The lines that we draw have to perpetuate something. We have to be able to acknowledge the lines to be able to pass them on. We have to be able to see that we no longer live in a Rebbe-led Judaism. We can't turn to just one person and take all of the answers, because Judaism's so informed by the familial, the society, the community, everything around us. Society's changed because we have windows to the world. We don't have the same relationship with leadership as we once did. But what does that different process enable us? It enables us to have a conscience and a conscious Judaism. This isn't about membership or denominations, because actually all membership and denominations does is allows us to adopt somebody else's line drawing. This is about us as individuals standing within a community, making sure that we live a conscious life, making sure that we don't just take that which has been passed down to us and replicate it and perpetuate it, not allow it to be another part of our lives where the doors can open and close and we walk straight through life, wondering what life might have been, but not even perhaps asking us the question. Actually, it's about us reclaiming a conscious decision to be able to fulfill our acts, to do our Judaism in a way that's meaningful and speaks to us. So what's my dream? What's the vision? It's the vision of a Judaism which isn't taken for granted. A Judaism in which, if we're challenged, if we're asked why do we do something, we have an answer which isn't simply because that was done in my childhood, nor is it a Judaism which is based on guilt, the guilt of being one link in a chain of goodness, and that we hold fast to it only because of the guilt of breaking the chain. That we don't want to break the chain, but it shouldn't just be guilt that we pass on to the next generation. That what we pass on is a process, an informed decision-making process, where our children can turn around to us and say, this is my Judaism, this is what I do. And yes, it might be exactly what my parents did and my grandparents before them, or it might be something radically different. But actually, I chose my Judaism in a way that my parents chose their Judaism and their parents chose their Judaism, that was hearing the voices of all of those elements of our Magen David, all of those elements that make up our Jewish world, making sure that both the God and God of our ancestors has a voice, as well as our Ein Sof, that God that speaks to the whole of humanity. That not only does our Jewish tradition have a voice in our decision-making, but so does the knowledge and wisdom of the modern-day life in which we live. And so does our community in which we embed ourselves. But so does humanity in which we live and play a part of and make a difference to.